Imagine a woman in her late 20s, living a seemingly normal life in Bengaluru. Her name was Mahalakshmi, and she was working at a popular mall, while also balancing a troubled relationship with her partner, Mukti Ranjan Rai. What happened between them in early September of 2024 would shock the entire city and soon, the world. It was a gruesome and twisted tale of betrayal, violence, and death. Mahalakshmi's last days. Mahalakshmi had been living apart from her family, but she remained in constant contact with them. However, something had changed. Her relationship with Rai had become strained. Rai, who worked with her at the same mall, had become increasingly agitated, his patience worn thin by Mahalakshmi's growing demands. She wanted a bigger commitment, more money, more material things, a relationship that was taking a toll on both of them. Despite these pressures, no one could have predicted the tragedy that would unfold. The couple had been living in a small apartment in the Mahalakshmi area, an otherwise quiet neighborhood, but beneath the surface, a dangerous storm was brewing. Rai's restless nights turned into a living nightmare, as Mahalakshmi's demands grew more insatiable. One stormy evening, Rai returned home consumed by rage. A heated argument ensued, escalating to a point of no return. In a fit of blind fury, Rai confessed the darkest of secrets that would shatter their world forever. Mahalakshmi's lifeless body was found in their apartment the next day, a chilling confession left by Rai beside her. The small apartment in Mahalakshmi became a haunting crime scene, forever marked by the deadly end to Mahalakshmi's last days. The murder. On the night of September 2nd, things took a turn for the worse. It's unclear what exactly happened that night, but an argument spiraled out of control. According to Rai's later confession, Mahalakshmi had been pressuring him for marriage, something he wasn't ready for. She had demanded expensive gifts, even threatening to leave him if he didn't meet her expectations. The stress of it all seemed to push Rai over the edge. In the dead of night, he snapped. Rai strangled Mahalakshmi to death, and when she was no longer breathing, he committed the unthinkable. He dismembered her body. With a sharp weapon, he began cutting her into pieces, severing limbs and dismembering her torso with chilling precision. This act of brutality didn't happen in the heat of a moment. It was planned, deliberate, cold. Afterward, Rai stuffed the dismembered pieces into a large fridge, attempting to hide what he had done. But this gruesome scene wouldn't remain hidden for long. The discovery. It wasn't until weeks later that Mahalakshmi's body was discovered. Neighbors had started noticing a terrible smell coming from the apartment. But it wasn't until September 21st that her mother grew concerned and decided to check in on her. When she opened the door, what she saw inside would haunt her forever. The dismembered body of her daughter lay inside the fridge, each piece carefully packed away as if they were discarded items. It was too much for anyone to bear. Authorities were called immediately, and the investigation began. But that was only the beginning of the horror. Rai had gone missing, and police quickly realized that the murderer was still on the run. Rai's suicide and confession. The investigation led authorities to the state of Odisha, where Rai was eventually found in the town of Bhadrak. However, it was too late. Mukti Ranjan Rai had already taken his own life. He had hanged himself from a tree, leaving behind a suicide note that would shed light on the twisted events that led to Mahalakshmi's death. In the note, Rai made a shocking claim. He stated that he had killed Mahalakshmi in self-defense, believing she was planning to murder him first. According to him, Mahalakshmi had threatened him, claiming that if he didn't meet her demands, she would cut him up and dispose of his body in a black suitcase. Rai even claimed that Mahalakshmi had been violent toward him in the past, accusing her of beating him up when he failed to meet her financial demands. He wrote that if he hadn't killed her, she would have done the same to him, cutting his body into pieces and throwing it away. The aftermath and investigation. As authorities examined the case further, they began to piece together more disturbing details. Rai had confessed to strangling Mahalakshmi in the early hours of September 3rd. Before heading out the next morning to buy a sharp weapon, he then carried out the dismemberment in their shared apartment, cleaning the blood with acid to cover his tracks. Despite his confession, there were many questions left unanswered. Was this truly a case of self-defense, as Rai had claimed, or was it a cold, calculated murder fueled by resentment and anger? The police were left with the task of recovering the weapon used in the dismemberment, which had yet to be found. They also began their search for more evidence to support or disprove Rai's version of the events. While the police continued their investigation, the public was left in shock. This tragic and brutal crime would leave a lasting scar on the community, and Mahalakshmi's family would never be the same again.